Iqbal Chapter 3. That same night, as soon as the master had turned out the lights and we felt sure that he was asleep, little Ali went to guard the door while a few of us crept along to meet the new boy. Karim came too. Although he could never forget his responsibilities as overseer, his curiosity had gotten the best of him. Salman, a boy of 10 who seemed older because he was so hard and tough, came too. The skin of his face and hands was pitted by 3 years' work in a brick factory near Karachi. Maria also wanted to meet the new boy. She was a little girl, younger than me and tiny as a bird. She had arrived at the beginning of winter, but nobody had yet heard her say a word. We didn't know if she was mute. We gave her her name. She had learned it immediately. She slept curled up like a small animal near her loom, and she followed me everywhere like a shadow. Iqbal was awake. We could hear his chain rattle in the darkness. You could never sleep the first night in a new place. You felt lonely and you wanted to talk. All of us understood that. Most of us had had 2 or 3 masters, some even more. So we settled down near him. It was a moonless night, and we could barely see. "Be careful, Ali," we said. The master had gotten very angry when he'd last caught us awake at night. He said that it always made us stupid and slow the next day. Ali answered with a series of short whistles that meant coast clear. We whispered some questions and waited to hear Iqbal's story. Iqbal began. "My father used to go out early in the morning when the first rays of the sun appeared and harness our buffalo to the light plow. At that hour, even in summer, the air was still fresh and pleasant. All around, we could see the cultivated fields and the other peasants starting the day in the same way. I'd go with him, carrying the bottle of water and the vegetables my mother had fixed for him. At first, my father would work easily, and his thin arms wouldn't seem to feel the effort. But after a couple of hours, he'd have to slow down. The earth was like a stone. The sweat ran down his face and chest, and the red dust covered his hair. The plow didn't dig like before, and even the buffalo lowed from the heat. Between midday and 3, the sun beat down mercilessly, and it was too hot to work. The boundaries of our world seemed to disappear in the haze. So we lay in the shade of a tree, eating and drinking water, while the buffalo twitched his tail nervously to keep the insects away. "This is blessed land," my father would say. "It's good and fertile, well irrigated. Look how everything grows. All you have to do is throw down a seed, and by the grace of God, a family could live forever in abundance. Remember that, Iqbal." "Yes, father," I would answer. But there was never abundance in our house. There was never enough food, and my older brother was often ill. Once I asked my father why this was so. Why were all the wheat and oats and vegetables that we cultivated loaded onto carts the same day they were picked? Why in our hut was there only a sack of broken grain and another of dried chickpeas next to the fireplace? "Because all this belongs to the master," my father had replied. "And that's right." "He's the master," said my father. "Who are we?" "My father always said the same thing," interrupted Salman. "But then he also said that the master was greedy and evil. In the privacy of our home he would curse the master terribly. My mother would shiver and beg him, 'Stop, please, if he ever heard you.' She was convinced that the master had 1,000 ears and eyes. Women," Salman concluded, "they don't understand anything." I would have liked to tell Salman what I thought. Maybe, in his opinion, we girls were stupid and useless. But I know I worked as hard as he did, some days even more. Still, I held my peace, because Salmon was difficult. He was a rebel. He had been down in the tomb once for 2 days, and when he emerged, parched from the heat and stung by the scorpions, he just spat in the dirt. To him, nothing was as bad as working at the brick kiln. But he had always refused to tell us what brickmaking was like. I couldn't even begin to imagine it, but I prayed that the master would never sell me to the owner of a brick factory. It's wrong to curse our masters, declared Karim. What would we do without Hussein Khan? He's the one who feeds us and protects us. He lets us work so that we can pay off our family's debt. Yeah, jeered Salman, and he's the one who will kick you out one of these days when you're no longer any use to him. You'll end up hungry and alone, wandering in the streets. That's not so, protested Krim. The master knows that I am loyal, and he needs me. Right, to spy on us. I thought they were going to start fighting right there in the dark. Salman was right. Karim was always ready to tell Hussein Khan everything that happened in the workshop. But then, sometimes, it seemed that Karim was on our side. I couldn't understand it. My father's a good man, continued Iqbal. He's never cursed anyone. He's always accepted his destiny. Even when my brother got worse and coughed all night, every night, my father didn't curse anyone. He called the doctor from the village, and the doctor came with his bag and his glasses. He bent down over the bed and used an instrument to listen to the inside of my brother. First inside his chest, then inside his back, and he shook his head. I know, said Karim. I've seen it done too. Then he talked to my father, took his hat and the bamboo cane, and left. My mother was crying. She had already lost other children. The next morning, while we were harnessing the buffalo to the plow, my father told me that the doctor would return with medicine that might save my brother. And the doctor did return, and there was another man with him, well dressed, a merchant or landowner, and he spoke to my father too. At a certain point, he pulled some money out of a belt he had around his waist and showed it to my father, who only said no. And what happened to your brother? I asked. He didn't get any better. My father didn't have anyone who could help him in the fields. I was too young and weak then. He talked to my mother for a long time. Then he rode the buffalo to the village. He came back when it was getting on toward evening and went out to hoe the fields without even changing his clothes, and when it got dark, he came in, breathing heavily. He didn't even eat dinner, but called me over and told me that a man would lend him a large sum of money. $26, he said. I tried to figure it out in rupees, but couldn't. With that money, the family would be able to survive until the next harvest, and my brother would receive more medicine and, God willing, get well. He said I would have to work to help the family pay off the debt, and we wouldn't meet for many months. But I would learn how to make carpets, and this might help me in life. My father had a debt too, I whispered in the dark, after the embankment broke and he lost everything. A man came to talk to him, and then Hussein came and brought me here. Iqbal continued. My father said that he could send one of my sisters, but I said no, send me. He hugged me and asked if I was afraid. No, I said, but I was lying. The carpet maker came the next morning. He came by car, and it was very nice, even to my mother. I'm taking you to the city, he said. You'll like it. Just wait and see. I looked through the rear window of the car, and the last thing I saw while he took me away was my father whipping the poor buffalo, pushing it through the field. You should have heard the poor beast lowing. Oh well, said Cream. It won't take you long to pay off your father's debt. I know. I've seen a lot. Nobody works as fast or as well as you do. You'll erase those lines on the slate like the sun erases the snow on the mountains. In the dark, I saw Iqbal's teeth flash briefly, as if he had smiled. The debt is never erased, he said softly. It doesn't matter how good you are. You're crazy, cried Selman. You're saying those things because you're mean. You're trying to frighten us. Every day the master raises a line, and once he's finished, we'll go home. It was like that with the bricks, too. Believe me. We had to make 1,000 bricks a day, and we got 100 rupees for every 1,000. All my family worked there, even my sister. And did you cancel your debt? Asked Iqbal. No, grunted Salmon. But what does that mean? Some days it was too rainy. Some days the clay was too sandy. Sometimes the bricks broke when they came out of the kiln, and then just bad luck. Have you ever seen anyone pay off their debt? Asked the new boy. In the dark, I could feel Maria hugging herself close to me. Who knew if she could hear and understand what we were saying? I understood too well, and it annoyed me that boy, the newcomer, dared to say such things. I wanted to scream, "You're wrong, you liar!" But even though I barely knew him, he didn't seem like that kind of person. No, we all said, one after the other. No, we've never seen anyone pay off their debt. Salman tried to get a word in, and yet Ali, who was guarding the door, let out 2 shrill whistles. The alarm. We all crept quickly back to our beds. I tried to fall asleep, but couldn't. I kept turning this way and that. After a while, I crawled back over the dusty dirt floor. The new boy, Iqbal, was still awake too. I spoke in his ear so the others wouldn't hear me. What do you mean, I asked, by saying we'll never get away from here? We'll never go home? Who are you? He asked. My name's Fatima. There was silence for a few seconds. Can you keep a secret, Fatima? He whispered. Of course I can. What do you take me for? Then I can tell you, he said, lowering his voice even more. We'll get away from here. You can bet on it. You said it was impossible to pay off the debt. It is, but that's not how we'll go. How then? I'm beginning to think the master was right to call you a know-it-all. We'll run away. That's what we'll do. You're crazy. I'm not. We'll run away. You'll come with me. I didn't know him. He could have just been a braggart, or maybe even truly crazy. But still, I believed him. I went back to my bed and spent the night turning restlessly.